Welcome to Tuesday, the 7th day of January, 7 days into 2025. Well, folks, we're going to be unsettled through the weekend, and we're going to see more scenes like this, more frost, more areas of light snowfall, and animals gathered together. You got to wonder, hey, what's this guy doing over here? Kind of doesn't fit in. But hey, cows got to eat too. Well, it's going to be unsettled and cold through the weekend as northwest flow aloft will bring the weather from western Canada through the Rockies and through the plains. Generally speaking, when that happens, you're colder than average. You do have some opportunities for snow. Nobody's going to get a ton, but these little waves bring light amounts of snow here and there and keep temperatures chilly. Then the snow cover kind of feedbacks on itself, making the nights colder as well. In fact, we'll have a very cold night tonight. Some of you, especially in the valleys and the basins, will go sub-zero. So between now, the weekend, and into early next week, it's going to be cold, occasional mountain snow, and snow showers and flurries off and on across the lower elevations. We do see about a 2-day, maybe 3-day period next week where there's a little bit of a break, maybe a slight warming trend, only to be followed by the weekend of the 19th. We're watching for a potential push, a deeper push of cold air further west into the United States as the pattern kind of reloads and gets going again. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. In the meantime, keep an eye on vistas and views like this. It's just been a feast on the eyes in terms of what we've seen, in terms of clouds, auroras, and vistas like this. Well, if you take a look at the weather across the nation, a couple of things to point out. I want to show you something. See all the purple and the light blue right here going all the way into southern Arizona? These are cold advisories and freeze warnings. All the way to the Gulf Coast, we've got freeze warnings in portions of Florida, cold advisories there. So that's showing how extensive the cold is getting. Here are the winter storm watches for parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Expect this area of wintry weather to probably expand into larger areas by tomorrow. This is kind of a heads up winter storm watch, getting folks prepared later on. We have winter weather advisories for the snow that formed overnight and early this morning along the Front Range of Colorado and out into the plains. And we can see some more wintry weather up here in north central Montana. And here's what's left of the storm that went through the nation's midsection and moving out of the mid-Atlantic. Satellite photo today, again, looks a lot like yesterday where you say, well, what's going on? Not much, but it's the small details that are going on here. We have a little bit of wave and cold air. Anywhere you see blue, it's going to be cold or you're seeing cold clouds. You can see the cold and low stratus clouds, and some of this is snow cover across this part of the U.S. from what came through with the storm here lately. A lot of that's a low deck of stratus clouds and fog and colder weather. This next Pacific wave is hitting the ridge here, then is going to go up, over, around, and down. And that's the pattern you'll see here in a moment. Temperatures this morning, look at this, going below zero in parts of western Missouri, parts of eastern areas of Kansas, over the deep snow cover there, and all sub-zero temperatures right along the U.S.-Canadian border this morning. This area of cold up here will send shots south into the central United States here in the coming days. This is where we are as of this morning. This low coming through last night and early this morning is going to retrograde and go down into the desert southwest while the system pulls eastward, sending a shot of cold air down deep into the heart of Texas and all the way to the Gulf Coast, as I just showed you there, with the high remaining stagnant and about in the same position. So this will set the stage for a very cold day and a cold night. These are our temperatures by tomorrow morning. So notice anywhere you see gray, those are temperatures going below zero. So we're getting some very cold temperatures pushing into Texas tonight, into eastern New Mexico, and across many areas of the plain states. So be ready for a cold night, especially areas with fresh snow cover. Then by late tomorrow, we see the next low coming up over around the ridge and down. And this is where it gets interesting for the southern plains. This will drag more energy and cold air. This will start to evict moisture northeastward across the southern plains and across Texas. And we have a similar situation to which happened. This is a collision of air masses warm, moist air from the Gulf regions and coming up out of Central America and the cold air coming out of continental Canada. The end result will be a developing storm system. By Friday, it begins to throw moisture over the cold air, and that's when things really get rowdy in the southern plains. Here's our next wave coming up and over the ridge and down again. So you can see the pattern here. So between now and Friday evening, this is how the precipitation pattern works. Notice the snows right along and just east of the Continental Divide, nothing heavy, but very wintry. Lighter snows out here across the Dakotas and plains. Then the heavier precipitation where that Gulf of Mexico influence and moisture coming up out of Mexico starts to collide with that. Look at Mexico getting stormy here. Southern Arizona, New Mexico finally getting some precipitation returning to the area. And the end result when you convert that to snow looks like this. Again, nothing heavy, but light to moderate snows at times back here. Real mess here. And more moisture coming into the Great Lakes with lake effect snows in the Arctic air. And as we showed you yesterday, there's going to be an arc of icing conditions with this storm as well, like the storm that was further north this past weekend. By Saturday, another wave comes through, reinforcing the cold air. The high's in the same place, and the waves keep coming up, over, and down. So this will keep us active and cold through Monday and probably Tuesday of next week in the west. As you can see there by Sunday, into Monday, we're just basically in the same northwest flow. So precipitation for the second period of time, this weekend into early next week, looks like this. So what I showed you back here is basically through Friday. What I'm showing you here is what happens between Friday and Monday. We'll see light to moderate snows across the Dakotas, across a large part of Montana, the I-90 corridor of Wyoming, out into the plains as well, and the mountainous terrain, not getting a lot, but adding to the snowpack. So that's the second period. So when you put these all together, it's going to add up over time, and there's your snowfall. Some of those areas might get a little bit more than you're seeing there. Now, temperatures by Monday morning, I want to show you this air mass up here coming out of Canada is just kind of sitting there. So you can see some very cold temperatures coming out of Saskatchewan and Manitoba into North Dakota and Minnesota there, just hanging off to the east a bit. Still plenty cold out here, but the real bitter cold is headed off to the north and east for a little bit longer. It's this air mass up here that's basically going to stay and wobble. And as it wobbles westward is something we're keeping an eye on later next week and next weekend. This is the break I talked about at the beginning of the podcast. The high does come a little bit more to the west coast a bit. This will allow a little bit of a warming trend. So there's going to be a brief warming trend. Why do I say brief? Because this low will crash the party. It's going to come up, over, and around and down, causing the high to go back to the west again and opening the door to that very cold air I just showed you here. So while there will be a little bit of a break, it looks like early next week, by next weekend we're looking at this amplification of the high, and that's just going to drive the colder air further west. Not 100% sure this is going to happen, but confidence is growing that it will. And these are the temperature anomalies. By next weekend into the following Monday, this is basically from right around the 19th and the 20th, 18th through the 21st time period. You can see the cold getting further west, not so much into the east. And that'll be something to continue to keep an eye on in the days ahead for that third weekend of January. Have yourself a great Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.